place, isn't it?
Ta-da-ta-ta, ta-da-ta-ta-ta, ta-da-ta-ta, ta-da-ta-ta-ta, ta-da-da-da-da-da, ta-da.
Our story begins here, in the church administration building in Salt Lake City. Within this building was the office of Church President Spencer W. Kimball. For years, President Kimball had looked out his office window at all the people passing by, contemplating and praying about how to carry the gospel to all the world. He knew the gospel was not just for the people who walked the streets of Salt Lake City. It was to go to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. President Kimball saw the hand of the Lord at work preparing for that long-promised day. He said, "The Lord has made it clear. The time is at hand to go." In 1974, President Spencer W. Kimball called church member David M. Kennedy, an internationally respected U.S. statesman, to be a church ambassador to the world.
Every time he'd go into the office, he'd talk about where to open up in the world. And President Kimball wanted to open up the world. And so Daddy would put his hand over Africa and he'd say, "But, you know, we can't open up Africa because of the priesthood." So right after the revelation, before they announced it or anything, he walked by his office and he said, "You can take your hands off Africa."
The African continent became a focus for President Kimball ever after. On July 1st, 1979, Oscar W. McConkie Jr., an attorney involved in church expansion, wrote in his journal, "President Kimball is getting more adamant all the time about doing missionary work all around the world." He asked the regional representatives in a meeting, "What about Africa? They have waited so long." In August of that year, President Kimball invited Brother McConkie into his office and showed him a letter from a reverend in Zaire and asked him to go there on a fact-finding tour.
You know, when we went in, they were just so responsive, and they immediately wanted Oscar to baptize them. And Oscar said, "No, that's not why I'm here." And he poked Oscar on the chest and he said, "We Africans demand to know about the Prophet Smith. He's not just for your Europeans."
I am thinking of Joseph. He's just been in jail. He's just been let out of jail. He doesn't know if he's got a ragtag group of people in the church or not. And the Lord says to him, "The ends of the earth will inquire after thy name." And I'm thinking, I don't know anything about that section of the Doctrine and Covenants is true. I just saw it fully fulfilled before my eyes when these people demanded to know more about the prophet Joseph.
Despite Elder McConkie's efforts, it was not until 1984 or 85 that conditions began to fully ripen for official church recognition. Elder John K. Carmack had just been called as the counselor to the international mission responsible for Africa and got a phone call from his non-member brother-in-law. A Congolese man named BULA had inquired through a friend if she knew any Americans who could help the country with its agricultural problems.
So he called me, said, "Any way you could help us find somebody that could go give some help to agricultural aspects in Zaire?" And I said, I'm in charge of Africa for the international mission. So it's good that you called, and I will see what I can do. So I went to BYU and found some help, and nothing came out of that except that we got acquainted with BULA.
It was soon apparent that BULA was one of the most important figures in his country. In the early 1970s, he had first gained fame inside and outside the country for his role in helping manage the Rumble in the Jungle, a boxing event in Zaire between champions George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. This event was not only billed as the match of the century, but also regarded as a worldwide symbol of pride for those with African heritage. As Mobutu met with Ali and Foreman, BULA accompanied him as his translator. Even today, everyone in the DR Congo remembers the chant of the crowd during the boxing match, Ali Bomaye. In Lingala, this means Ali, kill him.
Ali Boumie, Ali Boumie, Ali Boumie.
Due to Bula's articulate advocacy, he'd later been named as the foreign minister. In a meeting in Paris, he famously matched wits with US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. The transcript of the meeting shows Bula's mastery of the details of foreign affairs. Kissinger referred to him admiringly. BULA then became the head of the Civil Guard, reportedly the functional equivalent of the Army and the FBI, and remained one of the closest presidential advisors to MOBUTU Sese Seko, the longtime ruler of Zaire. Convinced that a face-to-face visit between Mobutu and church representatives could be a win-win proposition, BULA, now a fast friend of the church, persuaded Mobutu to fly Kennedy and other church representatives from Kinshasa to the north of the DR Congo for a leisurely private lunch meeting at Mobutu's incredible complex of palaces in Gbadolite, the birthplace of Mobutu. During the 1970s, the village of 1,500 people was transformed into a Versailles of the jungle, with, in the words of author David Smith, houses, schools, hospitals, municipal buildings, a 5-star hotel, a 3,200-meter runway for the supersonic Concorde, and, the pièce de résistance, 3 palaces of kleptocratic kitsch. Describing an evening at Gbadolite, one journalist wrote, "At a marble-tiled terrace, voices rose from banquet tables set against a backdrop of illuminated fountains. Liveried waiters served roast quail in Limoges china and poured Loire Valley wines, properly chilled against the equatorial heat. Bon appetit," said the 50-year-old president. 5 church representatives had been invited: the newly called mission leaders, Bay and Jean Hutchings, David Kennedy, and Oscar and Judith McConkie.
We went to see the president. And after we saw the president, I said to Judy, "Who does the president remind you of?" And he said, "He reminds me of your brother Bruce." Now that's true, because he walked in and he controlled the area. I mean, he was it. And he liked Judy. And Judy said, "You're going to have to excuse me. I've got to go to the ladies' room." And 2 of his bodyguards got up to go with Judy to the ladies' room. Judy said, "I said, I'm going to the ladies' room. I'm not going with you to the ladies' room." And they said, "Well, yeah, you're not going anywhere without us." And I said, and it was Judy that said to them, "Well, you're going to get some new systems around here. And the first one is, I'll tell you when I go, and we'll tell you who goes with me."
Mobutu was most interested in talking to Kennedy.
David was an ambassador. I mean, he was a legitimate United States ambassador at large. And the Lord sent him over. He didn't know it, but the Lord sent him over there to help us. Because when he got over there and they met with a United States ambassador at large. They over in Africa knew they were dealing with a big shot, and so they were giving him all kinds of deferential treatment. And he's a saint, and he let us use him as a saint.
The timing of the visit of church representatives to Mobutu was perfect. The Lord seems to have made use of the president's political ambitions to accomplish his purposes for the church. Mobutu, who, according to McConkie, had just refused to see the U.S. Undersecretary of State, opened his conversation with Kennedy with a list of grievances. He felt snubbed, mistreated, and forgotten by the United States. According to McConkie, Kennedy handled the situation with courtesy and perfect aplomb, reassuring Mobutu that he would look into the problems he mentioned. And when he returned home, he did what he said he would do. Besides Mobutu's troubles with the United States, he was increasingly unpopular at home. Since opposition to his rule was coming not only from political groups, but also from the Roman Catholic Church in particular, he wanted to weaken the church's influence. Among other measures, he tried to reduce the Catholic Church's historic monopoly on Christian faith in Zaire by throwing open the doors of the country to additional Protestant churches, a sort of divide and conquer strategy. Thus, giving recognition to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was a way to both please his dinner guests and thumb his nose at his Catholic opponents. Mobutu's mind was made up on this question even before the dinner started. When BULA suggested that McConkie tell Mobutu a little about the history of the church, the president stopped him, stating that he'd already been briefed. "Make it short," he said. After dinner, President Mobutu said he will sign the Statutes of Recognition for the church as soon as he returned from a trip to Europe. "No problem," McConkie said. "No problem."
There wasn't anything unusual except the fact that clearly the good Lord was making it possible for us to get registered when nobody else ever got registered. The fact that the president decided to invite us to dinner and then took 4 hours to have dinner with us and had the thing on national television, made a big deal about it. All of this indicated to me that the Lord was moving this thing along. And now there are hundreds of thousands of people in Africa who are members of the church. I mean, it's a miracle. Just nothing. No, nobody could have ever dreamed that this would develop the way it has.
When the revelation on the priesthood removed the hand of Brother Kennedy from the globe in President Kimball's office, the hand of the Lord himself came down to bless the people of Africa with the gospel.